And now my brain is all scrambled because I can't decide whether this particular difference is made more complicated or less complicated by the fact that both countries drive on different sides of the road. Hello, Happy New Year. I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to words. You join me today for part 7 of a series that I've been doing for about a year. It's basically the Friday the 13th of listicles, just without all of the gore. 8 words that Britain and America use very differently, and in the previous 6 installments, some of the words I've covered include football, biscuit, and YouTube sensation. But one of the things that I like about doing these lists is that they cover some of the lesser known word differences. So sit back, strap in, and join me for the greatest sequel since Aliens or Terminator 2. Basically a James Cameron film. Who knows where the word bogey came from? You'll see why that's funny in a minute. But the word bogey can have multiple meanings across both countries. For those of you who are somehow passionate about it, golf brings up a shared meaning. In golf, a bogey is the score of 1 over par. That's Nick Faldo told me that. I just read it on Wikipedia. But as a wee British child, I used to laugh hearing that phrase on the TV because in the UK, a bogey is dried mucus. The green bits that you used to flick at your friends. I didn't do that. In the United States, that's referred to as a booger, which brings up its own confusion because in Britain we also have a word that sounds like bugger that is something else entirely. But in the US, a bogey can be something entirely different, something I found out while watching Austin Powers. In that, the Department of Defense, or someone, is tracking an unidentified aircraft, something they refer to as a bogey. And as a 16-year-old, in keeping with the rest of the film, I thought this was just more potty humour, referring to the mucus. No, it turns out that in the United States the word bogey can literally mean unidentified aircraft, particularly one that might be an enemy. And speaking of things that fly, that brings us on to this. There are, of course, lots of famous ducks in the world, from Donald to Daffy to Howard the. So Americans might be wondering, well, Lawrence, what do you call this quacky bird? And the answer is, are you ready? Are you sitting down? We call it a duck. So how did the word duck make it into this list? Easy. There are other meanings for the word duck. In parts of the UK, the word duck can be used as an affectionate term, kind of like how British people say, all right, love. Just substitute the word love for duck. My nana used to do it. But it's also a word you'll find in cricket. Those of you who are somehow passionate about cricket will know that it means a score of 0 by a batsman and is supposedly derived from the 0-like shape of a duck's egg. Ian Botham told me that. They actually did. But in the US, if you listen out for the sound of a cricket ball, all you're going to hear is crickets. But in the US, the word duck can also be used as a verb, and not just as in to duck under the table, which is something that I used to do in Britain whenever the Daleks came on screen, but you can duck in and out of somewhere like a party. And in both countries, a party is exactly the place you might be going if you're wearing this. Well, fancy that. The word fancy just by itself could have made this list. And that's because America doesn't really use the British definition of fancy, as in to find somebody attractive, as in I fancy She-Hulk. That was the first name that came into my head. But another difference involving this word can be found in the term fancy dress. In the US, a colloquial use of this term can often be to denote formal attire, such as tuxedos for men and ball gowns for women. In Britain, it's when you dress up in a silly costume in order to sort of impersonate a famous character or thing or animal. For example, in the summer of 2002, I ran a 5K dressed as Chewbacca in what was widely regarded as the worst decision ever made. Typically, if we do get dressed up like this, we're either A, going to a fancy dress party, what Americans might call a costume party, or B, it's just Saturday night. Was that just me? That was just me. But one place that you might find examples of both the British and American definitions of fancy dress is this. Normally when we talk about theatre on this channel, we're talking about one thing in particular, how Britain and America can't agree on the spelling. But firstly, having been a stage actor here in the United States, I've come to find that a lot of those theatres will be spelled the old French way. But this video isn't about spelling differences, it's literally about semantics. Because while both Britain and America have this definition, the word theatre has other meanings. For For example, in British hospitals, an operating theatre is a room where surgical operations take place. But in the US, the more recognizable American spelling of theatre is applied to another building where lots of people sit around watching actors. What we in Britain normally refer to as a cinema, or as I called it when I was a child, the pictures. Anyway, once the movie/film is done, it's time to hit the road. As discussed on this channel in the past, there are many differences between Britain and America when it comes to driving. Some of those are practical, like the positioning of the steering wheel, and some of them are lexical. And in some cases, both countries' roads employ the same word to mean different things. Take, for example, inside lane. In the UK, the inside lane is the part of the road that's sort of closest to the outer edge, right? Where all of the slow-moving vehicles are. And what's that called in the United States, you might ask? It's the outside lane, because I mean it is on the outside. So then my British viewers might be thinking, so what is an inside lane to Americans? Well, that's the part of the road that's nearest to the vehicles that are coming in the opposite direction. That's where you'll find your faster vehicles, and in Britain, we call that the outside lane. And now my brain is all scrambled because I can't decide whether this particular difference is made more complicated or less complicated by the fact that both countries drive on different sides of the road and have the steering wheel on opposite sides. Can you tell I don't drive? Good. Well, while I won't be winning any Formula One trophies anytime soon, that does bring us on to our next entry. What? Silverware? What's that got to do with motor racing? Glad you asked. Because in Britain, a motor racer or a sports personality of any kind might lift silverware simply by winning a trophy. So for example, breaking news, the England football team has won its first piece of silverware under manager Lawrence Brown. That was a genuine dream I had last night. And so Americans might be thinking, surely silverware belongs in the kitchen. And in Britain, this can be true, but not in the same way that it is in America. In Britain, household silverware can be anything from knives, forks, and spoons, all the way through to ladles and silver bowls and just other silvery stuff that you might use in the kitchen. In the US, it almost always refers to just the eating implements of a fork, knife, and spoon. So America, if you're ever in Britain and you want to acquire these things, just ask for cutlery. On the other hand, be careful if you ever inquire about this. One thing they don't tell you when you're moving to the United States is that the abbreviation IRA means something completely different. For me, it had always stood for the Irish Republican Army. I don't know why I'm smiling. I'm not a member. I'm just saying. I'm stating facts, right? The Irish Republican Army was and is a number of groups over the years that have laid claim to the same name, all with one goal in mind: to make the whole of Ireland independent from Britain. And when I was a kid, the IRA was behind a lot of bomb attacks in Britain. So imagine my surprise when I moved to the United States to find out that here, the IRA is an individual retirement account. Basically, an account in which you save money for your retirement. It is comforting to know that that difference exists. Now, British and of course Irish people might be thinking, well, what do Americans call the Irish IRA? And typically speaking, news reports in the United States will refer to them in full as the Irish Republican Army. The abbreviation, of course, not common here because people would get confused. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. We all know in Britain that a jersey is some kind of pullover shirt, one that might be worn by footballers, as in a football jersey. That use seems to be less common in the United States, though I have encountered it. That's not where the chief difference arises. The difference here is a geographical one. To most British people, Jersey is, well, it's an island. It's a crown dependency in the Channel Islands. To Americans, Jersey is often used as a shorthand way of referring to the very state that was named after that island in the Channel Islands, New Jersey. So think of how people get confused as to whether, is this the state of Georgia or the country of Georgia? That's how I am with Jersey, right? And this is the reason, among many, that I've never seen the TV show Jersey Shore, because I keep expecting it to be a rehash of Bergerac. Americans have probably got no idea what I'm talking about. Just look up the British crime drama Bergerac. You can thank me later. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. And a huge shout out to all of my patrons who make these videos possible. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so today at patreon.com/lostinthepond. Until next time, goodbye.